Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer. Hi, Nikki.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Pete.
Hi. How are ya?
Hi.
Feeling good? Feeling strong? Yeah.
I am. I'm feeling pretty good.
You
meditated before
sound
coming
great.
into this.
Oh, yeah. No, you look sharp. You look like you're on top of things. You look like your mindfulness is
Positive energy.
on lock right now. And you don't even need the Zoom touch up my appearance feature. You're radiant. This election week. Yeah.
I like the touch-up feature, though. I tell you, it does make me happy.
I'll tell you, I look like dirt. Look at this.
You
God,
don't.
I look old.
You do have some foggy glasses, though. I don't know what's going on with that, but
I know. Is that weird? I have sweaty eyeballs.
Sweaty eyeballs.
Sweaty.
It's a little weird.
It's not great.
You got to get some new eyeglasses, I think.
Well, mostly I just had a rough weekend. I had a really rough weekend, and it's something that's constantly kind of on my mind. This, what happens when ADHD meets other partner complications. And so I thought we would take a little time to talk about that today and anchor that in my stupid weekend experience and see how that works. And so we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety and ADHD and panic. And then we're going to talk about Gestalt therapy. Believe it or not, we're going to bring it all back around to Gestalt therapy. And I'm excited to talk about that. Before we do, head over to takecontroladhd.com. You can get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list. And we will send you an email each time a new episode is released. Connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at takecontroladhd.com. And if this show has ever touched you, we sure wish you would head over to patreon.com/the ADHD Podcast and check out our member program. For a few bucks a month, you get to join our online community over on Discord and our member group over on Facebook. You get to watch the live stream of this show as we record. You could hear all about my foggy glasses because of my sweaty eyeballs. We did a whole bit on that, a type 5 on sweaty eyeballs before the show started. You get to hang out with us in our online server and meet an incredible community of ADHD people who are amazing and have been there for years and want to help and support one another and grow. It's just amazing. Thank you all for your continued support. Oh, by the way, we record this, it's November, which means you get to join us for Happy Hour, which is coming up, another wonderful member event coming up the first Wednesday of each month. Patreon.com/the ADHD Podcast to learn more. Okay, so Nikki.
Yes. Where do we start?
Well, okay, I don't know. I've talked a lot about my health. I'm sure people are so sick of Pete talking about his health. That's all I can think about right now is that, it's another episode of Pete talking about his health. So I've talked a lot about this whole post-COVID health. It's not great. It's really hard. And so I try not to talk about it as much as I, believe it or not, I actually try not to talk about it. But this weekend was a real low point for me in my body and in my head. And so the background is it turns out that it looks like my vascular system right now is more impacted than we had thought. And there's poor circulation and really weird, gross swelling. It's just awful.
In your feet?
Yeah. Can't walk. Swelling in my feet. Like can't wait. It's like 9 months pregnant. Like swelling, right? It's just you can't
miserable.
You can't walk around. And so 2 weeks ago, my doctor said, here, I want you to get a blood pressure cuff. And I want you to take regular random measurements of your blood pressure over the next 10 days. And let's just see kind of what's going on with your circulation. And it did not take 10 days to discover that I'm super hypertensive right now, like dangerously so. And that we need to start some intervention. And they're talking about things like, the COVID related stuff. They're talking about all the COVID related buzzwords. But the bottom line is, and the way my doctor put it, like it looks like your circulatory system is doing a lot of work for your heart, and we need to give your heart a break. And your circulatory system is having a tough time keeping up. And so, there are lots of other sort of reasons that this may or may not be happening. But the bottom line is we have to change it. Continue collecting data and make some changes.
Collecting data.
Yeah, it's terrible.
What kind of data do you have to collect?
Well, blood pressure still multiple times a day, heart rate obviously constantly, and pulse oxygen, blood oxygen level. And so that's the same stuff that I was doing when I was deep in it in July. And so we're back to that. Because I get to this point where that is just physically exhausting.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Like imagine.
You're constantly panting with that experience. Like you're constantly feeling like you just ran a race. And, I'm doing the dishes. All I'm doing is standing and moving my hands, and my pulse shoots up to like 110, 120 sustained for that experience. And you just can't stop panting. And so then you go and you take your measurements. And that's when I had this sort of awakening yesterday, where I know we've talked about this before. It's been a long time, but when I went through grad school, like my hyper-focus sort of back of the mind activity to keep me going during my studies was to rip CDs, right? Because this was a long time ago when I went to grad school. And so iTunes had just come out, and I was very excited about taking all my CDs, my massive CD collection, and digitizing them all as MP3s. And so I would do that in the background, and that would be a little, it would take, sometimes 10 minutes to rip a CD. And so I would have 10-minute sprints, switch CDs, do another thing. And I realized this weekend that is the same muscle that is constantly hitting, being triggered for my ADHD for starting to measure the data. Like I am perseverating, I'm hyper-focusing on data and trends so much now that I have too much data. But what happens is that becomes a deflationary, a never-ending cycle, those negative thought experiences, because then you can't get to a spot to where you break that cycle. Right? It is so difficult to find the trigger to get out of it. When you have to keep coming back, doctor's orders, doing that work.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say it has to be very different when it's health related versus I'll talk to clients about time tracking, right?
Yeah.
And collect the data of how long it takes for you to do something. Don't change your routine. Don't change anything you would do. Just, without judgment, just collect the data, and we're going to look for trends and patterns and things like that. But in this situation, all of that really goes out the window because there is a lot of judgment because it has to do with your health. So you have to pay attention to what the numbers mean. And I can only imagine the anxiety that is stirring up every single time you have to document something.
So all of that, it's a constant reminder, a doctor's orders reminder of where you are in this space. And because I have a legendary anxiety around needles and the cardio phobia and all of these kinds of things. It became, yesterday was that sort of break, and right around 3:30, I just lost it. I just came off the rails. I'm just sitting here and I'm just in tears, and I just couldn't function. And all night long, it was this just sort of cycle of sort of this sort of prison of that experience of being inside of that, of feeling really feeling like my heart was 3 or 4 times its size, feeling discomfort in my chest, thinking, oh God, now I'm terrified of, waking everybody up and saying we need to go to the emergency room. What is that? Like that, of course, like that, of course we're going to wake up and go to the emergency room, like I was just trying to hide so much of that experience, from family and kids. And I was paralyzed by the stuff that lives constantly in here. And I couldn't stop focusing on the stuff that lives constantly in my body. And it was, finally around 5:30 this morning that I was able to kind of let myself go to sleep, and I felt my heart rate go down. I felt like the Hulk, in the Hulk movies. There's always this scene where it goes to a close up on his heart rate, his heart monitor on his wrist, and then to his eyeballs, and they get big and green. That's what I felt like. Like I was constantly looking at my heart rate monitor.
That's
because I thought I'm going to have a heart attack right now.
From 3:30 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. You were dealing with this kind of panic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sweating, just like in a ball, in a fit. And, of course, I feel like I can't talk to anyone. There's pain in my chest and up my neck. There's the terror of going to the hospital. Do I have insurance coverage? Of course I have insurance coverage. I have needles and drugs, and like it's an anxiety house of cards, right? So, pivot. I started thinking about the language that we tell ourselves. And this is, it actually took me back to our Joy Triggers presentations coming up this weekend, because we've spent a lot of time trying to find the triggers that get us out of the cycles that we perseverate on, right? And I couldn't find one. I admit it. Like I couldn't find something that would release me from this. I tried watching, funny shows. I tried the things that would normally sort of surprise me out of it, and it was rough, which was frustrating. But I ended up, I had the great fortune of producing a podcast interview between two other people on Dodge Ray's new podcast, The Change Paradox. He was interviewing Carlene Britton, who is a Gestalt therapist. Do you know anything about Gestalt therapy?
I do not. Never even heard of it. So you'll have to explain to us what this is.
Well, Gestalt is, it's a German word, and it means like shape, right? What is the shape of a thing? And I use the term colloquially all the time, right? It's a reference to like academic discussions and, things that are more than the sum of their parts. What is the Gestalt of this idea or something like that? But Gestalt therapy is, I have very little experience in it. So this was an interesting thing to watch her and listen to her talk about it. I'm going to go ahead and just read the intro paragraph from Wikipedia, because I thought it was a great way to summarize it.
Sure.
Gestalt therapy is a form of psychotherapy which emphasizes personal responsibility and focuses upon the individual's experience in the present moment, the therapist-client relationship, the environmental and social contexts of a person's life, and the self-regulating adjustments people make as a result of their overall situation. Developed by Fritz Perls and Laura Perls and Paul Goodman in the 40s and 50s, and was first described in the 1951 book Gestalt Therapy. So it's super attentive to the current sort of worldview of the client, right, of the patient, and what they're going through, and how it works. Well, at the end of all of Dodge's interviews on this podcast, he turns over the show to the guest to lead like a 10-minute experiential exercise. Sometimes it might be a meditation, might be just a coaching exercise, but he kind of steps out of it and just lets the guest roll with it. Well, this time, Carlene said, I need a buddy. I need somebody who can do this with me. And
this was just last week?
Yeah, this is just last week, right?
Okay, all right.
And she said, I need somebody who can do this exercise with me, because that's just how Gestalt works. Like you got to go to know, she says. You got to kind of be in it to understand kind of how the dialogue works. Because what we're doing through experience is trying to retrain the way we talk to ourselves, right? The kind of self-talk that we use. And we have to do it in partnership. And Dodge said, well, I'm a therapist. I might not be a great person to use, because I kind of know, I know the gag, right? I know how
Right.
it works.
Right.
And plus he says, I'm constantly being vulnerable on my own show, and I think it's going to be too much. Maybe Pete'll do it. And I felt like Mikey on the old Life cereal.
Yes,
Like, give
Mike
it to
will like
Mikey.
it.
He eats anything. And so I felt like that. And so I said, okay, here we go. I'm going to Ted Lasso my way through this. I'm just a vessel of positive energy, and I'm going to say yes. I don't know what I'm getting into. Let's try it. And so she says, okay, this is an exercise in 2 parts. I'm going to be your accountability partner or your therapist, whatever kind of role I'm playing here, but I'm going to be that role. You're going to be telling me kind of what your experience is and the thing that you want to change right now in your life, where you're feeling stuck, whatever you're looking to sort of get over. And I said, well, I need to get fit again, right? I've been unfit for a long time. I'm really unfit right now. And I need to find this place in my head where I'm not afraid to go out and exercise. And she said, great, we can do this. By the way, she says, you're going to hate me in part 1 of this exercise. I said, okay. And then we started the exercise. And she asked me, what are you going through? And I said, well, I'm struggling to get fit. I'm looking to rehabilitate after COVID. And she said, you're great. And I thought, oh, okay, good. Well,
you can do
I'm
this,
trying.
Pete.
You can do it. You're going to be fit. You're going to be a star. Like, you're amazing. You're amazing. You're totally going to get over it. Yeah. Yeah, I can see how it's scary, but you're totally going to nail this. You're going to do it. Does that sound familiar, that kind of language? That kind of self-talk?
It sounds so familiar because it is, I say it to my clients, you've got this, you can do this. But part of it, I think, because I have mixed feelings, right? Because I think that part of it, you want to hear somebody say that because you are doubting yourself. And so having somebody just say, I believe in you, like, I think you can do this. There is some like real value there, right? Like there's something about that that's like, all right, you're right. I can, like, I am stronger than I think I am. But then at the same time, you can't just leave it at that either. Like, you've got this. This is great. And then just assume that they're going to figure that out just because you said it was great. Like, there has to be something more than just you're great.
Yeah, right. Well, and the value of the you're great, when it is paired with something else, which is part 2 of this little exercise. And the first part was I told her after a couple of exchanges, it was very, very quick. And I said, I don't know what to do with this.
Right.
I feel like, like you're a robot lady, right? I don't know how to do this. I could ask, Alexa to give me this kind of advice.
Yeah. That's true.
What are we doing here? And yet the things she was saying, they're exactly the things I say to myself too. I can do this. I can get over it. Right. I can do it. I'm going to be a star. I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But none of them really dealt with the context of what I was experiencing.
What was really happening.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was. Exactly. So the second, she says, let's do it again. And this is part 2. And she asked me, what are you trying to do? And I said, well, here it is. I'm struggling. She said, how is it for you? I said, well, it's hard. It's hard to get up and get out of bed and feel like, every kind of ache and pain is a cascade of, physical ailments. She said, yeah, it must be really scary. I said, oh, yeah, it's terrifying. I feel like I'm made of glass, right? And we go down this road where now she is not just telling me how great I am. She is first reminding me of my experience, my context, and it took no time for me to be in a space of understanding now why it's so easy for me to be stuck in my head around going out and getting fit. That it has, it's not just I'm lazy or I'd rather play video games.
Or you don't have the willpower.
I don't have the willpower. Yeah. I absolutely do. Willpower was not even part of the question.
Right.
But what we got to very quickly was, I'm terrified. I feel like I'm made of glass.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very different experience. But without knowing that, it's hard to take, you're great, you can do it, seriously.
Yeah,
right?
you're right. Absolutely. Because
So
yeah. So what you guys did in that second part was really get to the root of what was really going on.
yeah,
And then once you really understand what's going on, then the conversation completely changes, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
not about being great. You've got this. It's a different conversation altogether.
yeah. And you know what's funny about it? Um, it can feel just as good, right? It can feel just as rewarding to come to terms with understanding the why about my experience, about why I'm relating to my universe the way that I am, the why I'm not getting up and getting off the couch and going to do this thing, as it is just to know that somebody believes in me, right?
Yes, and actually, as you say that, I wonder if it's because you have more of the context wrapped around it. It takes away that pressure too of I know I've got this, but I'm still not doing it, and so
Yeah,
because you can go into that shame spiral so fast, right? Like I know I want this, I should have this, I need this, I know I want it, I'm not doing it, right? Shame, 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 shame.
yeah,
Versus at least now you can acknowledge like this, there's something to this. This isn't something that's just a decision that you're making because
yeah,
you're lazy or because you just don't care, right? Yeah, no, I can definitely see what you're saying. I also relate it to the world that we live in right now with the pandemic.
hmm,
Is that I think, when we were talking about stress expectations and we
yeah,
were talking about we're not putting in context what is going on in our outside world and what we should really be doing or not doing. I kind of feel like this also kind of gives you that context too. It's like, wait
yeah,
a minute, there's more than just this going
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I say all that not to devalue the kind of rah-rah that we
Oh,
need,
right. For
right?
sure.
We
We need
need
that.
cheerleading.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think that there's something to explore. And I think it would be
Yeah.
worth like continuing a conversation about this because I think and from my experience with Carlene, and the way Carlene was talking about this, how she set it up was you can ask this of others. You don't have to go to a therapist to actually do this exercise. You can work with your accountability partner
Yeah.
and you can teach one another how to interrogate the deeper issues by this little give and take exercise. And what's so amazing is even if it's art, if it's in your head, it's completely artificial.
Mm-hmm.
The first part, there is a level of kind of robotic ridiculousness
Mm-hmm.
that sets you up for having the conversation more deeply
Mm-hmm.
immediately after.
Mm-hmm.
It is an incredible setup, and I think it for me, just having gone through it, it was very brief, and I think it was incredibly powerful little experience, and I think worth exploring further.
Absolutely.
So
Something that it reminds me of, just to tie it back into ADHD a little bit too,
yeah,
is that in one of my groups, we were talking about the different messages that we get from people.
yeah,
The you messages of, you do this, you do that. But there's also this message. It's the message of somebody thinking that they're giving you really good advice by, well, have you thought about like just
yeah,
putting together a to-do list? Have you thought about just using a planner?
yeah,
Have you do you have timers? Like,
yeah,
right? So here's this person who is, probably unintentionally trying to give you advice or give you something that they think is going to be helpful. But in the back of your mind, you're like, that robot.
yeah,
Yeah, of course. I've talked about these things. I've heard about these things. I've tried
yeah,
these things. But it doesn't get to the root of the ADHD. It doesn't talk about the ADHD and how that makes it difficult. And so just to kind of be able to see how I can see how this relates to that, right? Like how that
yeah,
is a pretty fair comparison of, oh, you're great, you can do this. But yet there's some real fear, especially with your health and anxiety around what that looks like. And I like how you say, not that I like it, because I don't like how that you feel this way, but just that
mhm,
you feel like glass. Because
mhm.
that really puts, how fragile you feel in that environment. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you. I think for me, that ADHD connection it became clear first thing this morning, right? As I kind of am wearily trying to, I wake up after a few hours of sleep and I realize like, the language I had been using all night was, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. I was not getting any more fine. But what it was, I feel like glass, and I feel like any sign that I am fragile or hurting causes me to feel more fragile and in greater pain. And it wasn't until I started thinking back to my experience with Carlene that I realized this is an introspection issue. I don't know why I'm feeling this way yet. And I need to ask better questions, right? I need to let myself talk more. I need to develop a closer relationship with the things that are causing my spirals and hyperfocus issues and exhaustion, and figure that out first. And I wasn't doing that. So I don't know. I these episodes, these Pete episodes, these feel like sort of gross navel gazely, but I just woke up and I thought, if any community might get a little something out of this, it's going to be our community.
Oh, absolutely.
They're
and
amazing.
Nothing about it is gross. I appreciate you putting yourself out there and talking about your experience, because listeners have to realize this just was an experience that you had 5 hours ago. Like this isn't something that, I know you had the exercise was a week ago, which is probably really put there in your universe on purpose, because you were able to reflect back at that at some point, early this morning. But no, I really appreciate you talking about this and being so open about it. And I appreciate you bringing up this new thing. Like I'd never heard of this type of therapy before. And from all of the things that we talk about with limiting beliefs and changing that internal that conversation we have, and then asking different questions, it's so relevant. So no, I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you, Pete.
Well, thank you, Nikki, and thank you everybody for hanging in with us and joining us on the show. Thank you for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute to the conversation, we're always over in the Show Talk channel in our Discord server, and you can join us right there by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level, patreon.com/the ADHD Podcast. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD Podcast.